Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. I just did a master class called Solve Your Sleep Mystery, and I talked about the three keys you need to be looking at if you aren't sleeping. So, I'm going to go over some of those things in the next three episodes, and I am going to talk about the first key today, which is the body. And so, some of you may not know that there are imbalances in your body that can lead to insomnia. And I know you might be thinking that you're healthy, so this can't be possible for you. And I want to tell you that even if you are doing all the right things, you can still get to a place where you aren't healthy and your body is out of balance. Because if you have any kind of symptom like insomnia, your body isn't totally healthy because a healthy body sleeps well. It's what we're meant to do. And so if you can't sleep, it's just a matter of finding out what's unhealthy in your body and correcting that, and then you can sleep normally. And I totally know where you're coming from too, because I got insomnia at age 39 in late pregnancy, and it didn't go away even after my son was born. And I have cared about my health for a really long time. I became fascinated about nutrition in my early 20s. So I've been studying health and wellness ever since. And so I always exercised, I ate organic, I didn't have a very stressful life. I was kind of living the life of a ski bum in Jackson Hole. So I didn't have a very stressful job or anything like that. And I took supplements. I knew what to do to be healthy. And yet I still developed insomnia. And part of it was because I did take birth control for 10 years. So that led to copper toxicity. I traveled in Nepal and India and got a parasite that I think stayed in my gut until I found out about it 13 years later with the lab testing that I did. So I just want you to know that even if you think you're healthy and you care about your health and you're doing so many of the right things for your health, if you can't sleep, your body isn't totally healthy. And that's insomnia is your body's way of telling you that. It's saying, "Hey, something is off," because you should be able to sleep normally. So, I wanna talk about all the different things, the different imbalances in your body that can lead to not sleeping well. And before I get into that, I do wanna talk briefly about cortisol because a lot of these imbalances have to do with cortisol and that your body's releasing cortisol at bedtime or in the middle of the night when it shouldn't be, when cortisol should be almost nothing. And so cortisol, as you probably know, is one of our stress hormones. And so I live in Jackson Hole in the mountains, so I always like to use the analogy of if I see a bear in the woods, my body's gonna release cortisol and other stress hormones to help me run from or fight that bear, right? And so what's gonna happen when my body releases cortisol is, first of all, it's going to release sugar, glycogen into my cells to give me energy. It's going to help me focus and concentrate so that I can think quickly and think about what I need to do. Is it a black bear and I should try to scare it away? Or is it a grizzly bear and I should maybe play dead if it starts to attack me? So it causes our mind to race to think quickly. It also increases heart rate and blood pressure and body temperature, and it decreases sensitivity to pain. So it's doing everything it can to help us survive in the moment. And then it also takes away resources from our digestive system and our reproductive system and our immune system because those things aren't important if you are about to die, which is what your body thinks is happening. And so cortisol is one of these stress hormones. It's also and it can wake us up at night, but it's also a very important hormone that wakes us up in the morning and keeps us alert throughout the day. So we do want cortisol and we do want to have the right amount of cortisol being released at the right times of day. And if we need it for a stressful situation, we want to be able to do that. But what's funny is that our bodies and brains don't know the difference between being chased by a bear in the woods and the everyday stressors that we're dealing with, whether it's being too busy and working too much, or having a pathogen in your gut, or having toxins in your body. Our body still releases cortisol and the other hormones because it is stressed, even though we don't need to be in fight or flight. It's still going to make us in fight or flight. And so cortisol also suppresses melatonin. So if your body's releasing cortisol at the middle of the night, it's making you wired and giving you energy, and it's suppressing your sleepy hormone. So it's definitely a matter of a lot of my clients, about half of them, I see cortisol is really high at night. And so the question is, why is that happening? Yes, you can take a supplement to lower cortisol, but cortisol is there for a reason. It's helping protect you. And so you don't want to just lower it with, artificially, or making your body lower it. That can cause more problems in the long term. So you really want to find out why your body's releasing cortisol at night and address that. So that's what I do in a lot of the lab testing that I do, is we're finding out why. So when we talk about cortisol, there are imbalances in the body that cause the body to release cortisol at night. The first of these has to do with gut health. Now, I've done an entire webinar, hour-long webinar about gut health. So this is a very involved subject, and I've talked about it more on another episode, so I can link to that as well. But briefly, one of the main things that I see in my clients is that they have some sort of pathogen in their gut, like a parasite like I had, or H. pylori, I see in about 85% of my clients. Candida is a kind of yeast that can overgrow and is really toxic. And the thing with these creatures, which with these pathogens, is that they are nocturnal. And so it's the middle of the night that they are eating and excreting and releasing all these toxins and causing all this inflammation. Now, cortisol is also an anti inflammatory hormone. So, whenever there's inflammation, your body's going to release cortisol to deal with that. When that's happening at 3 or 4 in the morning, it's going to wake you up and make it really hard to go back to sleep. So a pathogen in the gut is a very common thing I see in my clients, especially who are, again, waking up around 3 or 4 and just up and wired for a couple of hours. Now, gut health is also important because the good bacteria in our gut actually make 90% of our neurotransmitters. So serotonin, dopamine, GABA, melatonin, all these things that help us feel good and relaxed and able to sleep. We need the enough good bacteria to do that. And we need a good balance of the good bacteria to the bad, for that to happen. So that's just one way that, or a couple ways that gut health is really important for sleep. Now, another thing I see in almost all of my clients too is liver congestion or liver detox issues where toxins have backed up. It's more than the liver can handle. And so they circulate around, causing all this inflammation. And the liver is most active in the middle of the night too. So this is when this is happening. And if you also have a pathogen in your gut, that's creating all these toxins. So that's putting an extra burden on your liver in the middle of the night. So it's a total double whammy. So liver detox issues are something, again, I see in most of my clients, and I can tell this from the lab testing that I do. The hormone test, called the Dutch test, shows how your body's breaking down hormones by the liver. And there are multiple phases of liver detox, and there are multiple kinds of, for example, liver or phase 2 liver detox, such as sulfation and methylation and glucuronidation. So all of those things need to be working properly. And if they aren't, then they are going to need some temporary support while we're working on everything else. Now, another thing that's common are food sensitivities. So if your gut isn't healthy and the wall of the gut has become damaged, then your body starts reacting to certain foods. And that causes this low grade inflammation, especially if they're foods like gluten and dairy that we tend to eat all the time. And so then that can also cause you to wake up at night. And a lot of times you can't tell that these foods are causing a problem because the effects aren't immediate. And so you can't really tell until you eliminate them for at least 30 days and then add something back in, and then you might notice that you are reacting to that food. And that's what happened for me with gluten for sure, where I thought it was fine until I eliminated it for a month, and then I had it again, and then I immediately felt a little bloated. I felt tired, and I woke up in the middle of the night that night and couldn't go back to sleep. So that can be happening as well. Now, there are other imbalances in the body that don't have to do necessarily with cortisol, such as hormone imbalance. So, if estrogen or progesterone are low, and this is true in both men and women, then then that can directly lead to sleep issues. If estrogen is too high, for example, if it's higher than progesterone in women or higher than testosterone in men, then that can also directly lead to insomnia. And that usually has to do with the liver isn't functioning properly because the liver is supposed to break down estrogen and clear it from the body. So I see these different hormone imbalances that can also lead to sleep issues. But again, it's more than just supplementing with hormones. It's finding out why the hormones are out of balance. And usually this happens because of long-term chronic stress. So when the body's constantly making cortisol to deal with stress, then it starts taking away those resources from the sex hormones because cortisol and our sex hormones are all steroid hormones. And so it's concentrating on making cortisol. It uses all the resources to make cortisol, and sex hormones become depleted over time. So I commonly see this, especially as people get older. So it's really a matter of instead of just supplementing with hormones, like addressing what is causing stress in the body, so that then your body has the resources it needs to make those hormones naturally, and you don't have to take hormones forever. Now, another imbalance I commonly see in almost everyone have to do with minerals. So, minerals aren't talked about much except for magnesium, which you might be taking or have tried to take if you can't sleep. But it's really about the balance of minerals to each other, especially our primary minerals, which are calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. So, this is why a lot of times magnesium by itself isn't going to help if you're also deficient in other minerals and or if some are too high and some are too low. And so there are different patterns of mineral imbalance that I see that can all lead to sleep issues. So that's something really important to look for. Another thing I'm looking for is our heavy metals. So I mentioned that I had copper toxicity from birth control. I also had really high uranium because I live in the mountains and drank tap water, for a long time before I switched to filtered water once I learned about that. And so that had built up in my body over time. I see a lot of different heavy metals in my clients. So it could be lead, arsenic, cadmium, uranium, mercury, and plenty of people with copper toxicity as well. So this is really common. And these heavy metals are totally toxic. They accumulate in the brain and the liver and throughout the body. And so they can cause neurological issues and they cause all this inflammation. And so I never recommend any kind of like harsh chelation therapy or anything like that. I always work on balancing minerals first because your body will actually hold on to heavy metals if it's deficient in certain minerals because heavy metals can do some of the job of minerals, even though they're toxic. And so we always want to work on mineral balance first and then helping your body get rid of those minerals as it's ready and not forcing anything because that can cause a lot of unpleasant symptoms and health issues. Another thing that I see in about a quarter of my clients is mold toxicity. So they've been exposed to mold and their bodies aren't able to detoxify it properly, which is true for about 25% of the population. And so those mycotoxins are these toxins that mold produces, they build up in the body and they can cause a lot of really weird symptoms. So if you have weird symptoms like tingling in the hands and feet or frequent urination, there's so many different symptom clusters that I look for, then mold could be an issue as well. So that's definitely something you want to address. And another thing that I see in almost all my clients are neurotransmitter imbalances. So I talked about that when I talked about the gut and how the good bacteria in our gut make 90% of our neurotransmitters. There can also be genetic reasons why someone might be low in neurotransmitters or high in some of the stress hormones besides cortisol, also epinephrine and norepinephrine. And so I found that by testing directly for neurotransmitters, I can quickly give recommendations of supplements and lifestyle things they can do to help balance those neurotransmitters and start sleeping better a lot more quickly. And so these are just some of the imbalances that I'm looking for in the body. These are the major ones, the most common ones I'm seeing in almost everyone. And I'll tell you, like, everyone, all of my clients, they have more than one of these imbalances. It's never just one thing. It's never just hormones because hormones are going to be out of balance for a reason. And everything in the body is connected. And so if one system is out of whack, then that's going to affect other systems in the body too. So that's why it's so important to look at the big picture of what's going on in the body, and not just focus on one thing. Because let's say that someone has hormone imbalance and they have a parasite and their liver isn't functioning properly. If you only look at the parasite and you don't support the liver while you're doing that, your sleep and your health can get worse. And your hormones are still going to stay out of balance. So you really need to be looking at all three of those things because they're all connected to each other. So that's what I'm looking for in the body. As you can see, there are many different imbalances that can happen, even if you are taking care of yourself and caring about your health. If you aren't sleeping, there's definitely a combination of some of these things going on for you. And it's different for everyone. I wish it were the same, then it would be so much easier. We wouldn't even have to test, we just know what to work on. But it is very different for everyone as to what's causing their insomnia. All right, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that. Um, One thing I do want to talk about really briefly is the difference between wanting and committing to something. So it's easy to say that you want something or you want to sleep better, for example. And that's kind of the energy of like, I'll try, but if any obstacle comes up, probably not going to move past that obstacle. It's like as soon as it gets hard, we're gonna give up. And so wanting is really wishing that you deserved it or wishing that it's possible. And that's very different than actually committing. So committing is believing you deserve it and believing that it's possible. And if you listen to the last episode about my story with insomnia, you will see that I was 100% committed to figuring out my sleep. I did not want to live with that forever, and I did not want to take a sleeping pill. And so it took me a couple of years with a lot of trial and error to figure it out, but I was 100% committed to that. And my clients who get better are also 100% committed to doing what it takes to figure it out. And that's so committing is believing you deserve it and believing that it's possible. And so there's a really big difference there. And I'm not saying I'm committed to everything. I want to lose 5 pounds right now. I'm not taking action and 100% committed to doing that. It just sounds good. It sounds great. Like, yes, of course, I would love to lose 5 pounds, but I'm not eating chocolate and I'm not increasing my exercise and doing anything like counting calories or anything. Not that I think that that's the way, but I'm not 100% committed, so I'm not doing the things that I could do to make that happen. And so I love this quote that we don't get what we want, we get what we're committed to, and that is so true. So if sleeping better is something you are committed to, my team and I are here to help you with that. I've created a very comprehensive program that is looking at everything that could be causing your sleep issues. It's a body and mind approach and it's very customized to you. And so I'll be talking about the mental aspects in the next episode and then how your genetics play a role in the next episode. So these are the three keys is your body, your mind, and your epigenetics. And we address all of those things in my program. So if this is something that you are committed to and figuring out, then I invite you to schedule a consultation with me. We will talk about what's going on with your sleep and your health. I want to make sure that I can help you. And and then I'll explain how the program works and the steps you can take so that you can start sleeping better. And this is a permanent solution because it's all about restoring your health so that you can sleep normally. It's not a quick fix because there is no quick fix, but it is the way to actually get to the bottom of this for good and be able to sleep better and be healthy for the rest of your life. So, if you are committed to this, please book a consultation and we would love to work with you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I will talk to you next week.